Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews. This being a show where I talk about dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Ordinary Joe. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down. Went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we're actually rewinding a little bit, 17 minutes before graduation, and obviously all these different life choices are being thrown in front of him. Obviously, his Uncle Frank is like, yo, you need to, become a police officer. Like your dad, his mom is telling him to follow his passions and stuff like that, become a musician. I didn't realize his mom was actually a music teacher, and I no wonder she kind of pushed towards that. But then also his sister Celeste being there, I think is so interesting because it's like, I don't know what her circumstances are current day, but she's just not in the picture. I'm wondering what that's all about. It's not like you really gotten any insight into it. Side note, that actress, I've just seen her recently in Doom Patrol. I was going to have that conversation about just seeing actors in the same, but she plays Sherry aka Fog in Doom Patrol. So I was like, hey, that's interesting. But, because this is actually her first time, we've heard her mentioned before, but this is her first time seeing her on screen. So that was kind of interesting. But, basically, it's about his mom giving him a letter. It's like, right, as his Uncle Frank says, it's like a break glass in case of emergency type of situation. And the letter is a letter his dad wanted him to have, when he's having a tough time and has to choose. So and I love that most of the episode is him not actually reading the letter until the right time. So, and we watch as he goes down his different paths. And I think it's so interesting because we see the opening stage. Because, obviously in the first episode when he made his choices, we jump 10 years into each respective timeline. But we don't, see... In this episode, we get to see, the beginnings of it. So let's start off with the detective reality, where his uncle's kind of pushing for it. And he's, they're taking, a couch up to his room or whatever, and Eric talks about the fact is oh, hey, yeah, that girl Amy, she just called me. He's like, I don't want to pile on, because he started immediately regretting, oh, but what if I should have gone see Jenny? He's like, well, you made your choice, kind of stick with it. Don't want to pile on. But that girl Amy, hey, I gave her my number. No, I got her number, so we're going to go, out. And he's like, oh, take my lucky shirt. He's like, no, I'm good. And he goes in his gown. And the date doesn't go that well, which I thought was kind of interesting, but, to how that parallels to other realities, but we'll get to that soon enough. But the date didn't go that well. But he does eventually meet his wife and mother of his child later on, at that party. But at the party, his mom is putting on, hey, I want you to meet this, someone music related that will help you, follow your passions and stuff like that. So, he plays, something classical, for the performance. His uncle's like, right, here's your dad's badge. That's all I'm going to say. But then he also meets, Mr. Winnick? He's a guy that's your dad saved my life. I told you I told you about all the people your lives your dad saved that day. I never told you how he saved mine. Your dad knew that my wife was 9 months pregnant with our daughter, so he decided to go back in and not let me go back in. And he's like, because of that sacrifice, I was able to watch my daughter grow up. I was actually able to be a father for her, and it's it's sad he lost his dad, but it is that thing of that has ripple effects, it's just this family, this little girl got to know her dad, because if not, she would have grown up never knowing her dad. But it's I was fortunate enough to be here for my child thanks to your dad's sacrifice. So he's still unsure about because in this moment he's just kind of what if I did the wrong thing? What am I going to do with myself? He doesn't know, because he just doesn't think because for him it's I'm never going to be my dad. But his Uncle Frank is your dad wasn't even your dad. He's what does that mean? And it just means your dad wasn't perfect, which I'm is he referencing maybe there was something shady in Joe's dad's past? But I'm maybe not. Maybe it's just kind of no, he stumbled along the way before he even got, because in your head you think he's this most amazing, perfect person, but it's yeah, he made mistakes. He stumbled to get where he was because he was, he was a person. He made mistakes. It's even the fact is that we're sitting here right now at your dad's favorite spot. That has to be a sign, but he just slides over and it's yeah, how's that for a sign? It's just, he was so unsure of what he wanted for his life. And it's not until reading his dad's letter that shifted things for him. Because at that same time, we had the conversation. Like I said, there was the Amy and Eric thing, but that didn't work out. And it's interesting, like how once again, even that element, like just where like things didn't work out between the two of Eric and Amy, but also like he didn't go to see Jenny because she's obviously dealing with like the big news. Because she initially says like that's not why she called him, but then eventually that is why she keeps calling him throughout the day during the musician reality as well as the cop reality. But we'll circle back through the other storyline. So let's start off with the musician reality next, where his mom signed. Well, he ends up running into Amy, which I love that the moment he finds that out, like Eric, it's like kind of bummed. He's like, "Wait, you got her number?" He's like, "Oh, like," and it just kind of feels like, "Oh, like I've got nothing going on for me." But Joe goes out on a date with Amy, and obviously they hit it off, and there's like some nice chemistry there. And it's interesting how they help each other, because obviously from the beginning she talked about like, right, me and my friends were supposed to go to like a Beyonce concert and they went, but I decided to go to a Bobby Diaz reality. And I knew in that moment like, oh, like this guy is something special, and she wants to work for him. But it's like Joe being there, like edging her on, telling her like, no, like tell me, and he like mouths the words Beyonce, and she tells the story, but like, right, I went to see Bobby Diaz instead of a Beyonce concert, and it's like whatever jobs are open, like I'm going to keep the same meeting even if Bobby is busy, which they were like, right, like Bobby doesn't have time. And that conversation, like having Joe there, shifted that whole conversation, because obviously that played out very differently. It's just like, right, she didn't get the good news she was hoping for in the detective reality, which was on the date with Eric, and it didn't work out in the reality she was with Eric as well in the nursing reality. But in this particular reality, it pays off later on, like the opportunity presents itself, and that's how she started like working for Bobby later on in life. So it's just interesting, like showing you, just because the show has had its parallel moments, but it's never been this paralleled of just like so. Because this is the moment where, like, yes, his life is diverging, but, like, because every episode, like, I don't know, I'm not describing it right, but every episode up to now has all been, like, yeah, it's all the same moment, the minutes and stuff like that, correlating across the, just showing you the exact same moment across the three different, like, realities and paths in his life. But it's just, like, just seeing the events unfold, like, so... Because at this point, his life hasn't branched out so drastically... that we have so many different outcomes. They're still so tightly close to each other while the branches are beginning to fully branch out. And so, but a lot of this episode is purely like, right, the parallels, and just like, but it's like, it's slow branches throughout. And I think that's what makes it so interesting. But continuing down the musician route, it is about following passion. Because she couldn't do the Bobby Diaz thing because it didn't work out, she decides to go to his musical performance thing, and instead of doing something classical, he plays Billy Joel, which his mom's kind of upset by, because it's like, I did this, and but for Joe, it's like, it's like he's going by passion alone, and it's like that's what like Amy brought out of him, like just going by that passion. And I mean, it worked out in the end. At first, he was scared because he lost the letter. He got so caught up in everything because, like, in a restaurant, he like got water spilled on, like his drink got spilled on, so he took his jacket off, and he goes back to the bathroom because it's like, right, like it's like if you're feeling lost, like maybe now's the time to read your dad's letter. Is what her mom was saying, because she's like, I set up this opportunity for you. There's this whole party here for you, and you're not here for it. And it's like, oh crap, he goes back to the letter, but get the letter. And luckily, Amy finds his jacket. In that moment, it's like they start making out. And then later on, he's talking about like, oh, this is amazing bakery. Like, oh, we should wait here. The line is going to be long, and the baker's called Wood, so of course it is. But he called up Eric, and he was just like, he's like, yeah, but like, he's like, beyond this, I have nothing, because I think at that time he wasn't really sure what his life was going to be, and so it's like, I have nothing in this moment. Like, he's just like, and he's like, I think I'm kind of I'm way like over my heart. And he's like, I mean, like, I'm over my head, like, I'm out of my depths here, because it's like, he's just never like, he's like, I just met the most like amazing, like coolest person. And he's like, yeah, I like her, but it's also like, what do I do afterwards? Like, what do I got? And at the same time, like, Eric runs into Jenny at the party, and Jenny's like, hey, where's Joe? I've been trying to call him all day. And then the next day, like when she does track him down, she sees him outside, like with Amy performing because they didn't have any money, and she was like, "Oh, play the ukulele, and we could get money to actually get stuff out of the bakery," because neither one of them, they got so caught up in things neither one of them had money. And that's when Jenny sees like how happy Joe is, and that made her decide, you know what, I'm gonna go down. I'm not gonna like, because I was like, right, like to bother him with this, because obviously there's one of the realities we saw was her talking to her. I'm sure she talks to her dad in every reality, but this is the one where she gave him up. Because I didn't talk about it, but there is the detective reality that parallels this, where Ray was like, "Oh, like whoever it is you're calling, like if it was me, I would pick up the moment you start calling, you know." And so that's where, you know, obviously they became a family in the detective reality. But like in this reality, she decided not to, like, because she saw like how happy Joe was, and it's like, right, throwing this at you, it's like. Because it parallels a little in her in the nursing reality, which we'll get to soon enough. But it is a situation where it's just like, right, she didn't want to throw that all at him. It's just like, right, you have your life, and she kind of had her life, because in that reality she gave him up. They gave their child up so that she could pursue her life in law, because it's not the plan she had, which we get into at the nursing reality. Because he went to the party to see Jenny, but he was worried, like, you know, what if like Jenny's calling me to say like things between us are over, but then Eric goes with his date with Amy, and Joe gives him in this reality, he takes the lucky t-shirt and things work out, and in this reality, everything works out. So like between him and Amy, they immediately kind of hit it off, and it's just like he was kind of off his game in a detective reality, but with the lucky t-shirt, because she's like, yeah, I'm all about truth, you know. And he opens up about being bi. He even opens up about, hey, this t-shirt is borrowed, and it's like, all right, I like that truth, you know. And so I think that's where they kind of hit it off. And Joe came to check on Jenny, and she's like, right, like, because she was throwing up, and she was like, I didn't want to, this isn't why I called you, but I wanted to wait for you with this. And so she took the pregnancy test alone in the other realities, but this one, Joe's by her side. And obviously, I thought it was actually just a really beautiful conversation about too soon, because that was her nickname for Joe. Like, it's like, oh, like TS. It's like, he was like, what is TS? And it's like, it's too soon, because she always felt like she wanted, like, for her, it's like, you've been my best friend for the past 4 years, and then obviously in the past few months, like, we kind of changed the boundaries of what that was, because we found out, like, early on that, like, things were happening between, like, that their relationship and their dynamic changed. But for her, it was a situation of, she was hoping it, like, she was like, she had her 10-year plan. She even talked about the fact is her plans having plans, because contingency plans and stuff like that. But it was a situation of, like, she talked about wanting to wait till 10 years to be, like, for kind of like the moment to be right for her to, like, be where she needs to be before we even get to this moment. But now I think it's a situation where she's kind of scared about, like, right, whether she's trapping him in this situation or not. Like, they're having this conversation, and he's like, no matter what you decide to do, like, I'm gonna be there, you know, I'll support you whatever way, like, you know, if you and she's like, we're keeping a baby, and he was like, okay. But he has a conversation with her dad where he's like, he knows what it's like to have a great dad, but he also knows what it's like to grow up without a dad. But her dad wasn't hearing it, because it's like, yeah, you've already done enough, because I think in his mind, it's like, right, you got her pregnant, and now you're shifting her entire life, and now she wants to keep the baby too. It's like, no, like, you've done enough damage. Like, you being you, so unclear what your path is going to be, you're not going to be around my daughter. So he's paying Joe off to disappear. And I wonder, did he ever tell Jenny that? Probably not. Like, understand, like, it's like his dad her dad already came off like a douchebag. But it's just like he's looking out for what's best for his daughter. And for Joe, like, obviously his mom gets on him about, like, missing the party and everything. And he was like, I'm going to be a dad. She's like, yeah, I get it. In the future, he's like, no, I'm going to be a dad. And she's like, Jenny? And he's like, yeah. So the reason why he didn't become a musician in this reality, because he needs something more solid, and obviously being a police officer doesn't pay enough, and his mom's like, and it's also dangerous. So that's why he went down the nursing route in this reality, because he wanted a more practical job, something that, like, her father couldn't deny anymore. He's like, I want to be there for Jenny. I'm going to double down. I'm not going to, like, let her dad, like, scare me away, because if I choose to, like, if I'm doing something more practical like nursing, he can't deny it anymore. Like, I'm going to do what I can to support our family and be there. And that's the beautiful thing about, like, you know, it ties into the letter, like, all three realities, obviously, where it's a conversation of no matter what you choose, like kind of go down that path. Like even if it's a choice that you feel like you might have made a mistake, or just a choice that you didn't like, make another choice. Because for him, it's like just be brave, be bold to kind of jump at whatever's in front of you. Because I figured the letter was going to be whatever. Like when he finally reads the letter, it's just going to assure him like like whatever path he was choosing in that moment, it made him go like, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go down that path. Because in the detective route. Path, I say route like it was a video game, but the detective path in the in that reality, because he's reading the letter with his sister, because she also got one. She's like, when I was in like my toughest point, I read that letter. And so he's like, Joe's like, wait, you got one? He's like, yeah, you weren't the only one that got a letter, Joe. But and he read it kind of like when his mom was sending him upstairs, in the nursing reality, like maybe you should read it now. And in musician reality, he was reading it while like Amy and him were, she was sleeping while they were waiting for the bakery to open. So, but I thought it was like this beautiful letter that I'm not going to do it justice by like trying to, like, I'm going to try and paraphrase it, and I'm not going to do it justice. But I thought it was so beautiful. Like making a choice is simple. I could be but it was basically like you can make a choice and that's simple, but the problem is like always going down, like keeping with it is always, it's never the easy. Living with that choice is not always the easiest thing, but it's like regardless of what you choose, because it's not like, oh, you should do this, you should do that. It's like you make your choice, you be brave and you be bold, and that's all it takes. You make a choice and you make another choice and you make another choice, and that's kind of what life is. You find what you love and you go all in for it, essentially. I'm butchering it, but I thought it was beautiful. And it's just like my not so ordinary Joe, because obviously there's a conversation of like he knows better than anyone as a police officer that you only get one shot in this life, and so you might as well it's very like beautiful and inspiring letter, and I thought that was so awesome. Like I said, it just makes him double down on like each of the respective choices make that he ends up talking about in the nursing reality. He talks about Jenny, about how for him it's like he's like, yeah, I loved you this year, but that was too soon. I loved you and that was too soon, and I loved you so much junior year, it hurt, so that's why I try not to love you senior year, but I did love you. And it's just like he's like, I'm going to do what I can. Like he's like, right, I hope in this moment you tell me my timing is just right. And he takes off his shoestring and he proposes to her, So like, it's like, it is just a thing of like, once again, there is no right or wrong amongst these circumstances. It's just what choices, it comes down to the choices you make is all it is. And I think that's beautiful. The one I'm more inclined to, just because I'm like, because like the musician route, it's beautiful because it's about passion. But also, like, I feel like I'm more inclined to the nursing reality. Like, that's the one, like, my heartstrings pull towards. But it's also, like, the beauty of, like, pursuing your passions, but also pursuing what you believe to be the right thing to do, knowing, like, it's not just for his uncle's sake of, like, right, you gotta follow this path because it's in your blood. Like, there's that, but it's like, me personally, I feel like I'm more inclined to be the nursing reality or not for my personal life, but just storytelling wise, like, I probably like lean more towards the nursing reality or the musician reality, but maybe the nursing reality a little bit more. Like I said, there is no like, oh, this life is better. Every life has its complications no matter where your choices are. Like, where things might be better in some cases, maybe kind of a little worse off in others, but and like, once again, like, we see the choices, like how they play out, how they've impacted, once again, not just him, but even Eric and Amy's lives in different regards of like, right, him and Amy didn't circle back around to each other until 10 years later. Same thing for him and Jenny. Well, him and Amy in the detective reality, him and Jenny in the musician reality, and there's a complication of their son and him being up for adoption, but then obviously everything kind of playing out the way it did in the nursing reality. So I don't know. I think it was beautiful all around. I think it was just like a great episode to kind of like, right, because at first I was like, oh, we're going down this route this late in the season. That's interesting. But I think it adds even more layers to what we've come to experience. It kind of gives you, once again, that the opening act to each respective path in life he chooses. So I think it was kind of a necessary thing at this point to kind of see like early days of those lives and kind of get to live in those lives, at least like the early choices that he makes and the choices that, it's like, right, you make this choice, then you make another choice, and they sat down, and like I said, the branches at that point had already started forming, but I think this episode, by the end of it, you really see the branches go in their respective directions of like, yeah, this is, no backpedaling, not, you know, doubling down, like I said again, on the life that he's chosen. So I thought that was great. So I'm excited to see where the next episode ends up taking us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.